Did you ever think of acing your life? Welcome to today's episode of our Mindful Self-Improvement podcast, where we explore the path to self-confidence, resilience, and a fulfilling life. I am thrilled to introduce today's guest, Dr. Michelle Maidenberg. Dr. Maidenberg is a distinguished clinician with over 30 years of experience in helping individuals transform their personal and professional lives. She maintains a private practice in Harrison, New York, and serves as a co-founder and clinical director of Through My Eyes, a non-profit organization offering free clinically guided videotaping for individuals with chronic illnesses. Michelle has authored award-winning books including Free Your Child from Overeating and Ace Your Life. She's a prolific blogger for Psychology Today and has been featured in numerous media outlets like the New York Times and Forbes. Her TED Talk on circumventing emotional avoidance has garnered widespread acclaim. In today's episode, we will delve into topics such as emotional avoidance, the importance of aligning with our core values, and practical strategies for managing negative emotions. Dr. Maidenberg will share her ACE method, which focuses on acceptance, compassion, and empowerment, providing us with valuable insights and actionable tips for leading a thriving life. Welcome, Michelle.
Thank you. So nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you. It's our pleasure to have you on the show.
Thank you.
Let's start and dive in with my first question, please.
Sure.
So, what is emotional evidence and how does it manifest in our thinking and decision-making processes?
So emotional avoidance, I did a TED Talk on it a little while back. And it's amazing to me how individuals, really tend to avoid their negative and uncomfortable emotions. Yes. And I just had a session right before this where I'll give you an example because I think examples really hone in and help us to really kind of internalize what I'm saying. So
yeah,
I have a medical student that I'm working with. She's in medical school and she's just about to take a really important exam. And the exam will dictate whether she gets the residency that she wants or not.
Okay.
So there's a high stakes, really, really high stakes, which you could imagine. And I explained to her, I said, often, right, we could be in a position where we have to make a really, really, really important decision, or we have to be focused, right? Because there's such, it's so critical for whatever reason. Like if somebody, and I used an Olympian as the example, right? Like the person has to perform, right? And it's the difference between getting the gold medal or getting no medal, right? Or the case is. So she, what she's struggling with is kind of anxiety that's coming up, performance anxiety before taking this exam because of the high stakes. And she's finding that the more that she spirals, it actually impairs and impedes her ability to focus, which is what she needs to do in order to take the exam, right? So she's kind of working against herself to some extent. Now, if you think about it in terms of avoiding the negative emotions, like we're talking about, when her brain is telling her, you're going to fail, you're not going to do well, right? You don't have this, right? You're not smart enough, and on and on. The propensity is for her to avoid that, distract from it, avoid it, because our brain wants to avoid those negative emotions because it doesn't feel comfortable. And not only does it not feel comfortable in general, it doesn't feel comfortable in our bodies because we do have a physiological response to that stimulus that goes through our brain. And our neurotransmitters get activated. Our cortisol levels, right? All of those things that are kind of intrinsically in our body puts us in a position where we spiral even more. So then when her body's, let's say, getting activated and she feels it in her chest, she's feeling like this big weight on her chest, then she has difficulty concentrating. And then when she has difficulty concentrating, her brain is saying, see, look, you have difficulty concentrating. You're never going to get this because your exam's coming in 1 week. And look, you can't even focus. So how are you going to do your practice tests? And on and on and on. So that's what she's been doing. And guess where it's gotten her? Into a really negative spiral. It's affecting her focusing. And she's not able to really work and perform at her best. There's a barrier there. So instead, which is kind of counter, if you think about it, it's kind of counterintuitive to the way our brain works and the way we typically conduct ourselves. I'm saying to her, in a situation like that, when you're so activated, what do we need to do? I call it like the 3 R's. We need to reset, we need to reconnect, and we need to reinvest. That actually entails leaning in to the thoughts, leaning into the feelings, leaning into the body sensations, okay, rather than working against it. And I teach her those skills. And it's been making a substantial difference, a huge difference, as opposed to fighting up against herself, And I was just talking to her, which was, she loved the metaphor, but I was talking to her about the power of just being with your mind and teaching your mind to settle and to pause through meditation and practice. And I said to her, if you have a puppy, okay, and you have not continually trained the puppy to sit every time you give it the bone, you can't start yelling at it and berating it and putting it down because it's not sitting while you give it the bone. You haven't trained it to do that, right? How would you feel about yourself? You'd feel awful that you're yelling at this poor puppy who doesn't know what to do when you're giving the bone. So you have to, our mind is just trying to protect you. It's saying, be aware, be alert, I have to hold you accountable. You need to be scared so that you work harder and you study harder and you don't even take a minute to breathe, so that it takes away from moments of studying. Mm-hmm. And although it's trying to protect you, it is actually creating havoc and it's causing your demise. So we went over all the skills and anyway, so that is why we avoid. Yeah. That's what our brain does.
Yeah. In addition, so what skills and steps can individuals take to manage or cope with intense, negative or uncomfortable emotions to avoid acting behaviors like angry outbursts or overeating, or things like that?
Yeah. I mean, we all participate in behaviors that sometimes are unhealthy and unhelpful. Hmm. Who doesn't? Whether it's overeating, whether it's anger, whether it's acting out, in our relationships. There's so many things that we do. Procrastinating.
Yeah,
and on
we do.
And on. Yeah, sure. Yeah. That's the nature of humans. And by the way, interesting, you told me you're in Germany. This is universal. Mm-hmm. So I do want to say that. Happens. Yes. This happens all over the planet. Okay. It's not just, relative to a culture, a setting, a situation. This is a human being. We all do this. We all self-sabotage in some way. And it has a lot to do with the way we're wired, like I said, physiologically and biologically. And we're all wired the same, obviously. We all have the same mechanism in our bodies. So we really have to interrupt and disrupt those thoughts when they come up so that we can interrupt the behavior and we can actually pause and make a more mindful decision. And, you talked about values, but it's really connecting to your values and being intrinsically clear on what those are in every moment. In your thinking and your doing, really important. That is how you build self-belief, self-compassion, self-efficacy, all of those things through the doing. So, like with her, I'll just use her as an example because we just talked about her. She was having the thought in the moment, especially like when she's doing the practice tests, because she was like self-doubting and she was like questioning whether she was getting the answer right or whether she should answer something different, or does she even have the intellect to answer the question? I mean, all of this was kind of streaming through her brain. And then she was noticing when she was thinking that way, she was becoming overly anxious and also very insecure. right? Then what was happening is she was feeling it in her body. So she was feeling it in her chest, she was feeling it in her abdomen. And then it was affecting her focusing. So you have to really go through the mind, the body, right? And also the bodily sensations and really get into the noticing. She used an example, because I record guided meditations every Thursday morning on my YouTube channel. So she said to me, I just wanted to hear your voice. I thought that would make me reconnect. And she said, I was listening to your guided meditation and I couldn't focus on what you were saying because my mind kept on interrupting it. And then I got so frustrated and I said, no. I said, the magic isn't in doing the imagery that I'm telling you to do. It's actually noticing when your mind is interrupting. That's just like kind of background noise, right? When you can, and when your mind recalibrates, then you could look, kind of go back to the imagery. And guess what happens over time? The more you do it, you'll notice that you'll be able to focus better over time. It's training the brain. It's literally like exercise for the brain, right? So, we kind of talked about that and kind of connecting to herself. So I do in my book, I came up with steps for disrupting thoughts. And it also depends on how activated you are. So I do want to say that the less activated you are, the easier it is, obviously, to integrate the skills because your body, right, isn't on overdrive and it's not on red high alert. Once you get to like from a 0 to a 10 and you're trying to integrate these skills, not to say you can't, but it's going to take more effort. So as soon as you notice the thoughts disrupting or the body, right, have impacting, that is when you really want to recalibrate. And for her, which she asked me, she's like, oh, but sometimes I can't even concentrate. Like, I don't know what to do. I said, well, if that's the case, then we need to go into our ventral vagal. We need to go into our body because we're not going to be able to do anything unless we really, really are able to work on the neurotransmitters and our ventral vagal system. Right. And I gave her some examples, where we could kind of think whether it's specific breathing exercises, whether it's, self-compassion exercises, which is what I teach, my patients. It's, I do also like kind of finger taps. So it's like, I am okay, anything that can connect you to your senses, and that's tactile. I even said to her, if you're sitting by your desk, look out your window and count how many blue cars pass by. Again, we're using our executive functioning. Anything that allows us to use our executive function. She smiled. She laughed when I said that. And I said, why are you smiling? She goes, it's so funny because when I'm so activated out of 10, I can't even think straight to do some kind of like executive functioning exercise. So I like that one because you don't really have to think, but you are thinking. Even though you think you're not thinking, you actually are.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I hope that answers your question.
Yeah. Just to keep it short, in maybe can you put it in 2 or 3 sentences? How can we effectively deal with anxious and depressed thoughts and feelings so we can improve our mental well-being?
Yeah. So I wish it were that easy because, right, then I wouldn't be here and I wouldn't have a need to write my book. And trust me, I'd give up all of that if it were that easy. Unfortunately, it's not. It's literally anything that you want to do well, you have to put effort and practice into. That's just the way it is. And I don't care what it is. So that is true of our health and our mental well-being. And that's just the way it is, right? We like to think that we could do quick fixes and that, right? Even exercising. What happens? People will invest in exercising and then in a week they don't see any change, so they give it up.
Yeah, mostly.
No. Mm-hmm. So we really have to invest. That's the first thing. The second thing is there isn't an easy way, but there is a practical way. And the first thing is, again, being in the present moment and to notice non-judgmentally, which is really the definition of mindfulness, right? Because our mind is constantly in the past and in the future. So we really have to be in the present moment because we only know what's going on right now in the present moment. Yeah. We don't know what's going to happen in 5 minutes from now. We don't know what's going to happen in an hour.
Yeah, totally agree.
Yeah. So, and then also I give, like I said, the only thing I could say is read my book. That will help you. But I give very concrete activities and exercises, in order to really work on those thoughts and those feelings and those body sensations in the moment when you are activated. And I focus that around, ACE stands for acceptance, compassion, and empowerment. So I teach the barriers to each and skills how to integrate each as well.
Yeah. So let's talk about mindset. How can we facilitate a growth mindset to enhance our motivation and achieve personal and professional success?
Yeah, mindset is really important. So Carol Dweck wrote a book called Mindset. And one of the skills that she teaches, which I love, is saying yet, right? So when we talk about ourselves, like instead of putting ourselves down and like, I didn't achieve, that, period, because that can make us feel very, again, insecure. It could make us feel low self-confidence. I didn't achieve that yet. So that there's openness and understanding that that's going to happen and I need to put time and effort into it. So that's like, again, just in terms of the research and etc. Mindset is really important. I call it more, I use the word reframing because the ways that we think are okay. Our brain puts thoughts into our mind for a reason to protect us from safety, right? And from discomfort. That's what our mind and our physiology is based on protection. So it's really reframing the way we see things sometimes, and I'll give you one quick example. Instead of waking up and things going wrong and saying this is going to be a horrible day, which is what we do, which puts us on a path of subsequent circumstances by which we maybe are not focusing or we are offline or whatever the case is in our behavior. Saying, yeah, this is like a difficult, challenging moment in a beautiful day,
Makes the difference.
Yeah, there's 24 hours, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Okay. So I'm a big fan of core values. How do core values influence our decision making and how can aligning with them foster satisfaction and commitment in our lives?
Yes. Core values are essential. I have a whole chapter on core values. And all my work is centered around core values. So I do a lot of exercises around core values, and I talk a lot about how critical that is to integrate into our daily lives, both to evaluate what they are and also to assess on a daily basis whether you leaned in or out of them. And basically what it is it's what's foundationally truly important to you at your core. And understanding that about yourself, you could understand how you're defining that and what you need to do in order to lean into your values. And so, as another example, as I'm a parent to 4 children. And if I have a little bit of an off day, maybe I raise my voice or whatever the case is, right? It happens.
What we all do.
Yeah. So instead of saying, I am a horrible parent, what's wrong with me, which we all do too, I could say to myself, I didn't quite lean into my value of parenting as much as I'd like to today. And tomorrow I am going to make more of a concerted effort to lean into it. And that's going to include me speaking in a very rational, calm, compassionate voice and tapping into my compassion rather than my anger and frustration, right? So it's a lot more empowering, and it leads us to have more confidence in ourselves and also to work in a way that's actually going to fulfill our needs and lead into us living our best life and forming the relationships we want in our lives.
Mm-hmm. What does the research say about self-acceptance and self-compassion, and how can we cultivate these qualities to increase our overall well-being?
Yeah, self-compassion is a big one. A lot of the work is centered around Christian Neff and Christopher Germer. They do a lot of work around self-compassion, and Christian Neff wrote a book called Self-Compassion. So I highly recommend it, actually. It's a wonderful book. So we know, according to research, we used to think, right, if you think about the way we disciplined was tough love. And that's very antiquated today. That actually doesn't work. And we know that it's actually counterproductive. So when you connect through self-compassion, that is when you thrive. That is when you actually do things that are in line with your values, not through putting yourself down and berating yourself. It's the opposite. We know that. The research clearly states that. It leads to greater well-being, greater self-satisfaction, greater productivity, greater performance, and I could go on and on. This is research-based. Okay? The problem is we don't learn how to do that. We don't learn how to concretely do that, and that's where I come in and teach you those skills. We learn skills to be compassionate towards others, not towards ourselves. And that is a critical skill. And I always say that we need to teach children these skills because, they go into the world and then these children turn into adults, right?
And they are the future for all of us, yeah.
Yes. And we know, listen, we don't have to go far beyond the world as it exists today. There's so much going on right now, right? All over the world, for that matter. So we see how people, right? People don't behave necessarily in the way, in the way that they can, because of barriers that get in the way and lack of compassion, for self and others, of course, too.
Mm-hmm. What are the common barriers in maintaining good habits and consistent positive behaviors, and how can we overcome this?
Yeah, so there's barriers. It's interesting because the way I broke up the book, with acceptance, compassion, empowerment, the first parts are the barriers. And the second part is the integration of skills. And I end off each chapter with a guided meditation to integrate the skills. We have to understand the barriers, and there are so many of them. Both societally, the way we are culturated, based on our families of origin, how we grew up, based on our personality, based on our shadow. And I could go on and on. There's so many factors that get in the way. Even like you go on social media and it's like glaring. We're supposed to be this way and we should think this way. We should, we're just inundated with these messages all over the place. And again, that's universal. I'm going to say that again. All these things are totally universal.
How can individuals work on their confidence to increase productivity and achieve greater life satisfaction?
Yeah. So that is my model. My model is getting through stuckness. And getting through stuckness means building your confidence. It's literally a journey and it's a work in progress. And I always talk about like filling the bucket, filling the confidence bucket. And I tell people, when you're making a decision, a good question to ask yourself is this leaning into and reinforcing my confidence, or is it taking away from it? And that is a good way to think about it when you're making an important decision for yourself. Right? Because everything we do, everything we say, all our behavior will dictate whether we lean into our confidence or out of it. And the more we lean into it, the more, again, we're building up our confidence and the more we're going to be doing to work towards our values. If I believe I'm a good, and effective parent, I am going to make efforts, right, to being more attuned and to being more compassionate, to be more connected and to be more loving and caring and thoughtful and all of those wonderful things. Yeah, because I'll believe in myself. Mm-hmm. If I don't believe in myself, why bother?
What inspired you personally to start Through My Eyes, and how has this non-profit impacted the lives of others?
So Through My Eyes is a nonprofit organization, and the mission is it offers free clinically guided videotaping to chronically medically ill individuals who want to leave a video legacy for their children and loved ones. And it was actually formed because of unfortunately, a friend who was 36 at the time and had a 9-year-old child. And she was unfortunately diagnosed with her second bout of breast cancer, which at that point was, pretty lethal. So she wanted a videotape for her daughter. As developmentally she grew and matured, she wanted to be able to speak with her and offer her, what her values were and also give her some life lessons and all of that. So I helped her with that. So the reason I started it was I wanted people to be able to offer it for free or low cost. I wanted to be able to offer it in the setting and the vicinity that they felt most comfortable. I wanted to make sure they had support when they went through the process from a licensed mental health professional. And I also wanted them to have some kind of structured format. So I did make up a questionnaire of like 200 questions, which I specifically, when I'm working with somebody, I formulate and I customize the questionnaire for them. So and I've done over 300 videotapes. I would love, by the way, and part of what I'm looking to do is to restructure the organization. I would love for it to be more vast. I would love to offer it more nationally and again, even internationally, because I already have the structure and it works. So I'm always looking for partnerships. I'm always looking for anybody who's interested in the mission. I'm always happy to share.
Yeah, I think we have to talk about it.
Yeah, okay. Sounds good.
So thanks for sharing us on your personal journey, and it has been an absolute pleasure talking to you. Thank you.
Me too.
And if you want to learn more about Dr. Maidenberg's work, visit her website at www.michellemaidenberg.com. I will post it in the show notes. There you will find the links on her blogs, guided meditations, quizzes, and a wealth of other resources to help you on your journey to self-improvement. And thank you so much, Dr. Michelle Maidenberg, for sharing your profound insights.
Yeah, I'll show you only because I love the cover. I'm so excited. That's the book. It just also, for those who are interested, it just came out also on audio. I narrated it myself. So it just came out last week on audiobook as well.
Oh, that's a good hint. Thank you.
Yeah.
We appreciate your time and look forward to applying this valuable lesson that we've shared.
Thank you so much for having me. I appreciate it.
And to our listeners, thank you for joining us today. If you found this episode helpful, please subscribe, rate, review the podcast. Your feedback helps us continue to bring you inspiring and transformative content. I hope this episode inspired you to ask questions and discover yourself. Join us tomorrow for more insight questions and next month for an inspirational discussion on your path to personal growth and happiness. Until next time, stay mindful, empowered, and striving for a happier life. Goodbye. Maybe you're just a question away from your best year. Talk to you another time. Bye-bye.
Yes. Bye.
Bye.